we'll just move straight into The Impulse by Dr. Ricarda. And I'll just give a brief bio of who she is. So Dr. Ricarda Engelmaier is the founder, CEO of My Collective. And this is a platform for female leaders during and post-parental leave. It's a platform that connects them during this critical point in a career with peers across the industry and empowers them through trainings, converting parental skills into leadership skills. The women are also introduced into the world of impact-oriented startups and act as pro bono mentors in this dynamic and purpose-driven field. This allows women to not only come back with a strong network as a backbone and upgraded skills, but also to return inspired and filled with an innovative and entrepreneurial spirit, which these female leaders need for their companies. So I'm sure Dr. Ricarda has some great information that she'll be sharing with us. And so Dr. Ricarda, without much further ado, I will let you take over the session with your impulse. And she'll be doing a 10-minute presentation and we'll have 5 minutes of Q&A. Kindly post your questions in the chat section. Dr. Ricarda, welcome and nice to have you.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. Thank you so much. Great. Thank you so much for the lovely introduction. May I add to the introduction that I'm feeling the imposter syndrome right now as we speak. So it's good to feel connected to the whole topic in such a way. Anyway, thank you so much for having me. I totally love the BMW Foundation's Responsible Leader Network. I love the fact that there's this gender alliance. I think it's great. I only don't love the fact that I wasn't part of the party in Mexico, but I am definitely part of the party on the WhatsApp group and follow most of you guys, see what you're doing. I think it's all absolutely amazing and impressive. And with that, I would like to start on a topic that even those amazing and impressive women who are around, and I think they're also men in our gender alliance, are actually experience an imposter syndrome. And I would like to have a couple of hands from you guys up who has known the term before this session, who's been aware of this of the term imposter syndrome. And now a couple of other hands up who had to Google it or had to give it a name. Okay, good. Because with that, I will give a short introduction of what I think is one definition of it, and I'm sure, and it's a rather gross one, and one definition of what it's not. So what it is, it's the idea that you are only succeeding due to luck, and you're not succeeding because of your talent or your qualifications. And what it's not, it's the occasional self-doubt that all of us have. And the difference is occasional self-doubt is in a frequency and persistency, it's a different feeling. You have it all the time. It's persistently there. You constantly feel like you're not managing this. This is a kind of constant self-doubt or occasional self-doubt. Imposter syndrome is different. It's sort of like this one moment or this one presentation. Even if it shows up again, you're generally aware that you know things and you totally deserve it, but in the certain moments you don't. You can have different definitions of it, and I would love to discuss about this later with you guys. But generally, I would like to show you a couple of things of what the imposter syndrome is often explained and what is perceived as. It's often thought as something that is an introvert trait. So in your thoughts or feelings, it's sort of, it's in your thoughts and in your feelings about yourself. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be an introvert. I assume that most of you have done these kind of personality tests, the MBTI or some kind of Gallup Strength Finder or whatnot, to find out what kind of, especially the MBTI kind of gives you, are you an extrovert or an introvert? Also, extroverts are experiencing the imposter syndrome. And common thoughts that would come up to your mind is, what gives me the right to be here? Or what am I doing here? or I don't really belong here, or I really can't do this, I'm not good enough, or I was just lucky, it just came at a good time, sort of thing. So if you have ever experienced that, this kind of imposter syndrome or any of these questions, please keep your camera on. And if you have never experienced that, please turn your camera off now. And I'd have to view on gallery view. I can see a lot of faces on here, so there's a lot to discuss later. So this brings me to the next point. You are not alone, right? So there's studies showing that it's 9 to 82% of the population that experience it, that realize it, that recognize it as an imposter syndrome. And that's what sort of, let's say, studies show. But the question is, where does it come from? And what are the patterns that lie behind? So often it's a mixture, a complex combination of anxiety, perfectionism, and maybe also sometimes depression. And it can lead to burnout, depression. Again, it's a kind of vicious cycle. And so one potential origin is the personality itself. So you might have a tendency for perfectionism, and that is really something that might lead you there, which we come to later. Another potential origin is childhood experiences. So if you've ever in your experience heard your grades are not good enough for the parents, or your sibling is outshining you, the consequence will be that in order to be loved, you have to perform and you have to achieve, especially in academic households like my own. This is something that you hear a lot in your childhood. Hence the doctor, Sylvia, that you just mentioned before my name. So there are a lot of things that come up in your childhood and that make you kind of perform more. So there are outside factors. Institutionalized discrimination, of course, but also this lack of belonging. So it seems like the more people around you look or sound like you and you feel more confident, and you will experience it less. The fewer people that look or sound like you, the less it might also have an impact on your confidence level. So the learning that you have is basically, or that you could have or should have, that it's not you, it's your environment. And you can be aware that you can belong to a group, for example, women in STEM, or young adults in a rather sort of, let's say, aging society or in a company, or ethnic racial minorities. So if you are aware that you're in this group, being aware of the fact that this might call up the imposter syndrome is already one step ahead. And this is why it's so important to talk about biases and importance of diversity and inclusion. But who am I talking to? I mean, this is the exact group to do that. So some studies have shown that there are different types of imposter syndrome and different types of people who experience it. It's one, the perfectionist. It's impossible to be perfect, so you ultimately will lead to some kind of failure. And whenever that hits, that's when the imposter syndrome comes up. The second is natural geniuses. People who it just flies to them. Things just come in so easily, you don't need to work for anything, and then out of a sudden something comes that doesn't fly your way, and poof, there's the failure. The third part is an individualist. The third type is an individualist. So a solist who can do everything by themselves, can do everything also better than others, and then if it doesn't work, or you actually might need, for a couple of things you might need help, that's where the failure comes in. Or you're an expert onto something and you need to know everything there is, a bit linked to the perfectionist, or a superhero. A couple of moms around me feel like superheroes or murderers, and you need to succeed in every role. You can be a friend and an employee. It happens a lot to mothers, I have to say, maybe also to fathers, but there are the 5 types. If you want to share, do you want to put your fingers up of which type you identify with? We'll have perfectionist is one, the natural genius or the individualist, the expert or the superhero. I'm clearly putting myself into the category 5. I can see another couple of 5s. That's nice to see. A couple of 1s. Thank you for sharing. I can see a lot of 5s here. That's actually quite cool to have so many superheroes around. And a couple of 1s as well. Perfectionist, definitely quite tangible to the imposter syndrome. So then I guess you know how it feels, right? So it feels like the pressure to work harder. You basically need to keep others from recognizing that you have shortcomings or failures. Or you need to become worthy of the role that you already have, because you believe that you don't deserve it. Or you need to make up for what you consider is a lack of intelligence or lack of, lack of intelligence most probably. Or it's also something that actually feels like a feeling of guilt that you're tricking others to believe that you're that cool and great and that you're a superhero, and you're not. And the effect of this will be that you work more. So it's like a bit of a hamster kind of a cycle, right? So your accomplishments, if you have accomplished something, it doesn't reassure you. The product of your effort, it will be to maintain the illusion and the illusion of success. And if you get recognition that you have earned, you think it's actually sympathy or pity. And when you accomplish something, you say, okay, it happened by chance, and you blame it, and then it was sort of, it was by chance. So the funny thing is, now we've seen a couple of hands up, we've seen a couple of different types, and we said you're not alone. It can be up to 80% of the entire population, not only worldwide, also in your own team, in your own family, in your company, in your immediate environment. 80% of the people can suffer from imposter syndrome. This includes Sheryl Sandberg, Tom Hanks, Lady Gaga, Howard Schultz, the ex-CEO of Starbucks, quite outspoken about it, Serena Williams, Ariana Huffington. So there you go. These are in our company, and they're quite outspoken about it. So what can you do about it? You can acknowledge your feelings, talk about it to trusted friends in this circle here. Share. It feels less overwhelming if you share, especially when you open to peers. You don't have to open to everyone, but if you open to peers, that really helps. Building connections in your network. Actually, the fact of sharing already builds a connection and a network. You can also challenge your own doubts and see like where actually is it on the surface, or is it at a lower level? You can do that internally. And obviously you can try to avoid comparing yourself to others all the time. Easier said than done, I have to say. So now what I did is, when Barbara and I talked about the imposter syndrome, I've looked a bit deeper into it, saw a couple of research, and also shared this topic in our group in my collective. So I was already saying I'm running a startup based in Germany, but it's across industry in Europe. And we are a B2B business, so we work with large companies that send their top talents to our leadership program during parental leave to come back to the career track. So we have these women who are full-on career animals and clearly want to go on. They've been awarded mostly by the CEO to participate in the program, so they've quite a good big push. Now they also get a baby, which for most of them was also a dream, so they're kind of there, right? And then parental leave hits, and out of a sudden insecurity trickles down. At first chaos is there, and then after a couple of months when the chaos is sort of becoming normality, you realize, oh my God, what do I know? Where do I stand? I hope nobody sees that I've only been changing diapers for the last year, and nobody ever sees my flat because it just smells like diapers. And so there's a lot of insecurity accumulating, and that's exactly the reason why a lot of women specifically, but also men who go on parental leave, and we've had our first man in our program, which I'm very happy about. It happens exactly with them. You kind of come back in a bit like a situation like this when you go back to your job, and you do have to apply for a new job most of the time. Your old job isn't there anymore. So this is super important. And we discussed it, and we came up, and I want to share a couple of the findings because I thought they were super interesting. First of all, you don't always have to look at yourself. You can look at your team members who are also suffering from the syndrome, and your superiors, and that's really interesting. So our career animals in parental leave that we have in our program are from kind of male-dominated environments as well, from Lufthansa, Airbus, BMW, and so on. These are quite male-dominated environments. There are also consumer products which are rather less male-dominated. So what they said is, my environment seems like a lot of King Kongs, right? So they kind of like this in any kind of meeting. And they are all doubting, do they also experience imposter syndrome? And the answer is yes, right? And the question now is, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with King Kongs around you who are overachievers, and you know that probably 80% also suffer from imposter syndrome? So just knowing about it and understanding already shifts your perception. And that already is quite a change, and it's sometimes quite nice, actually. And then again, if you have a team or colleagues around you, also there it will happen. So here there are a couple of more advice, because you can be a bit more proactive with that, and you can give them space to expose also different inputs, different ideas, this kind of arrow culture, talk about potentials rather than giving concrete deadlines. And actually, yeah, it's a healthy arrow culture that you can develop and talk about it. It's actually talk about imposter syndrome. There's something that a couple of companies have sort of come up with, that every month you do put in a different topic to talk about. So this might be actually good. And once you do that, you will see that people are actually more open, and there is a creation of a connection. And about yourself, it's basically what I've said before. It's acknowledge it, recognize your feelings, share it with other people. I'm very much looking forward to what we do here now, and check the facts. Check if this is really something to be insecure about, or if you actually totally deserve it, because I think you do. And you don't need to compare yourself to others. So with that, I'm not going to ask you to put any hands up or down or any fingers. I just want to have a smile on your face if you liked it. And I'm very much looking forward to the discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you.